The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and help me welcome Alicia Houston, running for the Board of Education.
It's wonderful to be here, Carl. Thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you for coming on, and tell us a little bit more how your campaign's going.
It's it's interesting. I've never run for any political office before, and I've surely never campaigned before. So I'm learning as I'm going, and some things that really work well and other things that really did not work well. So it's been an awesome learning process, and it's also been exhausting.
Yes, I guess it is.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just learning that how to split my time equally, between working and being a mom and, being a dog mom to the 3 dogs and trying to be, a somewhat good, significant other, and then taking care of myself too and making sure I'm advocating for the parents and their choices. And yeah, I've learned to wear a lot of different hats, Carl.
And you learned a lot about people out there, too, I imagine.
Yeah.
Have you heard a lot of problems said that they have? Or?
So I think the one big thing that keeps coming back is communication. I've talked with a number of different parents and all kinds of different stakeholders, parents, guardians, teachers, staff, administration, taxpayers, and everybody kind of keeps rolling back into the same issues that typically stem from communication, whether it's, ineffective communication, unclear communication, non-existent communication. But that's one of the biggest things that I've seen throughout this campaign process and for the year before when we were advocating for parental choices. And then the other thing is, the budgeting. Obviously, we can always do a better job at conserving the money and making sure it goes where it needs to go. And then I would say the third thing is retention for teachers, getting really good teachers in. Yeah, and keeping them. So I know that those are kind of the 3 things. And, obviously transparency and honesty and accountability are the other ones.
Yeah.
So.
Well, different people having a different perspective on things. I mean, the teachers and union, administration versus the people, are they really looking at it differently?
I think that it depends on which, I don't want to use side of the aisle. It depends on which area you're in, right? Because a teacher is going to have different sets of concerns than, say a taxpayer, and a taxpayer is going to have a different set of concerns over, maybe a parent or a guardian, and the same, goes kind of down the line. Sorry. It goes down the line. And so what we're seeing, or what at least I'm seeing, is that, taxpayers are concerned with, overspending and making sure that we're using our money wisely. We have a really large budget in Nashua, and we also, received a lot of money in CARES Act funding. So just, digging in and looking at how much money did we receive, how much money do we typically receive year over year, and how do we spend it, and how do we make sure that the CARES Act money is going where it needs to go. And I can see that on the side of the taxpayers, whereas the parents and the guardians, the biggest common denominator is the communication and the feeling like they have not been heard. For over a year, and that their parental choices are, diminishing, and that, they don't have a seat at the table. They don't have a voice. Their, choices are being limited with what they can and can't do for their children or their child. And they're one of the stakeholders, one of the biggest ones. But they don't have a seat at the table right now is the big concern that I'm hearing from the general population of parents.
So did they offer any solutions? What would they like to do to have a better communication?
Well, they want to vote some of the people out.
Okay. Oh, so that, okay, but that's where they feel certain people are not doing their
Yes.
job right.
Yeah.
But did they want to hear from you a different way?
They do. And I know that originally, not too long ago, I think anybody who doesn't, live under a rock knows that I lost my cool. I had a moment where I was very passionate about my children, and it was like watching a bad horror movie in front of you and it having to do with your kids and not being able to do anything about it. And you just had to sit there. And after a year and a half of watching my kids suffer through remote learning, I had a moment of passion, and my message, could have been really great, but my delivery definitely needed work. And, that's one of the concerns that I'm hearing from parents, is eliminating some of that internal turmoil within the board and on the board is, if you watch the board meetings right now, it's kind of like watching the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. It's just not good. It's not productive. It's, not serving the best interest of the educational investment into Nashua or the children. And again, it's a frustration point for a lot of parents that they don't have a choice. They don't have the option if they choose, and I know masks is a point of contention. It's, for me personally, I am pro parental choice.
Okay.
So, and I can't say choice enough, having the choice to, make sure that we set things in place for, retaining teachers and choices for parents, choices with the taxpayers and getting that input. And saying, it looks like our budget is going to be spent on X, Y, and Z. Have we evaluated and maybe looked at how we might be able to price shop that a little bit better? But it all comes down to the communication piece, and what people are really looking for is open communication and transparency, to be able to ask a question and get the answer or get the information. And right now, that for the vast majority of us, it doesn't exist. It's a very arduous process.
So it's a meeting that isn't completely in control, is it?
Yes.
So you do need somebody who knows how to control the meeting without being nasty about it, or without calling the cops in or whatever. You should have maybe one policeman or something who can do something if necessary. But I don't know why they're so resistant to that. Do you have any?
That's the $1 million question. I feel like
so they don't answer it.
I don't know why. I don't know why it's difficult. I mean, I think back, to how hard this has been for everyone over the last 18 months. We had a pandemic, and a lot of people got sick, and we were worried about, protecting our immune compromised and elderly populations, which I still think is super important. However, we did a lot of things at the expense of the children's learning. There was a lot of lost learning. A lot of kids did not learn well in remote learning. Some children didn't learn at all. And then there were children that really thrived. But when you think about the decision-making process, it kind of all trickles down, right? There's a top, and then it trickles down, and the decisions that you make at the top roll down to the bottom. And Nashua doesn't have a lot of that micromanaging piece. Once you've decided what the curriculum will look like, the teachers do a phenomenal job of implementing the curriculum. But we need strong leadership. We need a strong leader who can control a meeting, with being respectful, without, having those moments where, I don't like what you have to say, so I'm going to call the police and you're going to have to leave. And other things like right now, currently on the board, if you don't wear a mask, even if you're immune compromised and you have an exemption, you're not allowed to participate in the meeting. You can watch it on ETV, but you cannot participate in public comment. There's no call-in option. There's no Zoom option. So they've kind of essentially said, wear a mask or you don't get to participate. And as of today, we are, still fighting for that and saying, that there has to be an alternative. If people can't wear a mask, then you have to make a reasonable accommodation, which could be phone or Zoom meetings. I don't know what the cost efficiency looks like for that. But there was an article, and the commissioner of the Department of Education, Frank Edelblue, had come out today and said that the higher up, like John Formella and I think Ann Edwards, had specified that the districts shall provide an additional means to participate in public comment if they're offering it. Good. So we're making headway.
Yeah. Slow but sure, huh?
Yeah, it's it's kind of like that boulder, when you're pushing it up the hill, it doesn't go up real quick. You just have to kind of keep moving it and not letting it stop. So part of that is, the candidates that are running for election for the Board of Education.
Have they thought of having a afternoon or evening of just talking to residents, voters?
I don't know. Are you talking like a public hearing type thing?
Well, not necessarily. Well, it's sort of a public hearing, but where you have a chance to really discuss something for maybe 10 minutes instead of, 3 minutes you're given?
Yeah.
Because you can't really do that unless you're an expert teacher or something like that. But I thought that to give people their time and just consider some of the points, or maybe have a list of things. We're going to spend 20 minutes on this topic, 20 minutes on that topic, and you can talk, but let's do it orderly so more people can talk.
I think that's a great idea. I think that that's very similar to the public hearings that they hold for the Board of Aldermen, and even at the state level. You have state sessions where you're able to give testimony.
Open sessions like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know why it doesn't exist at the Board of Education level. I obviously can't answer that. If I'm elected, I can say that open communication starts there, and it starts with having those open dialogue piece, like those opportunities to have the open dialogue with all of the stakeholders. And because it's not, in my opinion, it's not the Board of Education's it's not they're not autonomous from the stakeholders. Their job is to represent their constituents and to be the voice for their constituents. So part of that is, how do you become a voice for a constituent if you don't know what their voices want to say? So again, something like a public hearing would be amazing. And I'm sure a lot of parents and taxpayers and teachers and staff and administration, I'm sure that everyone could buy into that and, bring the community a little bit closer together and put things on the table.
I mean, there's a number of ways of doing it. Up in the State House, some very conscientious things, whether it's guns or a couple other ones that they took the major auditorium there, and they have people coming in all day long. And the committee who's running it, they run it very smoothly, and I don't know how they put up with it that long, but they do. They last almost a whole day. And I don't know why that can't be done. I mean, you have 2 auditoriums in the high schools that are very large. I know there's 2 things that the aldermen used to do, having their meeting in Ward 1, and Mark Cookson had a meeting once a month with the people. And whether you were 5 people or 50 people, he talked about what he wanted.
I love that idea. I think... Nashua is such a great community. Right. I've been here, I think it's like either 4 or 5 years. Time gets away from me, right? I'm a mom and a dog mom. So if I'm not listening to, teenagers.
You're in that part of your life that I think it goes by
rolling their eyes.
Speed.
Yep, or dogs, barking because a leaf went by. But I think that having those open communications, and even somebody had said, one of the other candidates had said something that really resonated with me, and I cannot remember who it was. Actually, I believe it was John Sullivan in Ward 9. He's running against the incumbent Linda Harriet Gathright. He had said something that doesn't cost taxpayers anything. Right. It doesn't cost anything to return an email. It doesn't cost anything to return a phone call. And that really resonated with me, because if we were able to do that, and if the board members were able to communicate, a lot of the frustration I feel would be eliminated, or at least minimized because you feel like you're being heard. Whereas right now you can send, one email, 100 emails, 25 emails, whatever amount of emails to, our current Board of Education, and you're only going to get maybe 1 or 2 responses. And that's not how it should be.
No, people should emphasize that that's what we want. We want open communications. Yep. That's 2 ways.
I agree. And it also needs to be, open communication with the staff and the administration and, specifically the teachers, finding out what are some things that you guys need, because it's not, if we're thinking about the children, you have to think about the whole child.
Right.
And you have to think about all of the different parts that make up their educational background. And so part of that is, what are the educators really struggling with? Are they missing materials? Are there, different pieces of curriculum that they would love to implement that they think would be beneficial for, 1 or more children in the classroom? Because every child learns differently. It's not a one size fits all or even a one size fits most. It's every kid learns their own way. Is it fiscally probable that we'll be able to change the curriculum for every single student? Probably not. I mean, it's, you can't tailor, each individual lesson to each individual child. But what you can do is you can give them the tools that they need to be able to make it more of a well-rounded approach in their own classroom and use that autonomy to work with, the administration and the Board of Education. I know the teachers union represents them with certain things, but they should also have a seat at the table and be able to communicate with the parents and, the taxpayers and talk about their frustrations. And because I think that that's our biggest area of opportunity, is to bring the community together to advocate for the best interest of these kids, which includes, taking input from every stakeholder.
Yeah. And, I think they should look at some of the charter schools too, see what they do.
Yep.
I mean, I've been to a couple of them here in Nashua, and they're excellent.
Yeah.
But they're focused in a certain way of doing it, which, as you say, isn't probably easy for a school to do unless you're specializing that way. But the kids eat it up. The ones that were in the technical area.
Yeah.
I was amazed at what they were taking.
One of the biggest initiatives right now is the STEM program. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Art is another one. Art is up and coming. It's, that expressive piece, which, I mean, I'm kind of a drawing nerd, so I love art. And I have, my 12-year-old loves to draw and loves photography and is very creative. And so art's a really big piece in our household. It's not like that everywhere. But then we also have physical education, the PE programs, the health programs. You have the 4 C's of learning. So communication, collaboration, creativity, and there's one more, and now I can't remember what it is, but there's 4 C's, and whatever that 4th one is seems important, and maybe it'll come back to me.
Well, it's good. I don't know if that isn't there one of the charter schools here locally that's artistic in that way?
So some of the schools, and I don't have a lot of experience. I mean, my 2 children go to the Nashua School District. They're in the public school system. But what I understand is a lot of them take that competency-based learning. Like we have our oldest son who lives in a different state with his mom. But he got into this fantastic program where it is competency-based. It's very Montessori type, hands-on learning and, not so much teaching to the test, but teaching to the student. And that works really well for him. And I think that that's an approach that people could use when they're thinking about the kids. But I know that there's some teachers in Nashua that do it. We've had a really great, we've had really great teachers. There have been some that maybe didn't, because they're personalities clash, right? And some students, it's not the right student for the teacher, or it's not the right teacher for the student. But recognizing that is really cool. And seeing the ways that these teachers change the curriculum. But really what we would need to add in is giving them the ability to look at the charter schools. And if the charter schools are doing something one way and the teachers think that it's beneficial, but the budget doesn't allow for it, how do we help our teachers, and how do we get good teachers and keep good teachers in the Nashua School District while we're serving the best interest of the students and the children, and listening to what the parents have to say. And then you throw in, making sure that we have those conservative budgets and that we're not overspending, which is the concern of the taxpayers. If there's a way to marry all of that together, I personally would love to be a part of that. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to run for office.
So if you get elected, you would probably go around looking at these charter schools
I would.
and see?
Yeah, absolutely. I would look
idea.
at charter schools, Montessori schools. We have a lot of, religious schools. And I think that there's something to be said about looking at the different areas and talking to the different teachers. But I also, and I'll say this to anybody that's watching right now. If you're a teacher, feel free to reach out to me if you have some areas of opportunity that are challenges for you or things that you think are working really great. I think my contact information is below the screen, but otherwise it's alicia.houston@outlook.com. Feel free to send me an email. I look forward to speaking with the teachers and the educators. But yeah, I think that it's going to take creative minds because we have a very different future for these kids.
That's right.
We do. And I think that for me, when I think back to when I was in school, I mean, I had a dance class. And that was, the physical wellness, but I loved dancing.
Yeah.
And so it worked for me and it worked for a lot of other students. And we have a really great tech program. We offer a lot of great advances, but we need to also start that at a lower level in the lower grades too. So it's going to be important to look at all the different.
Have you seen any feedback from the superintendent in any way about what's happening?
I have not heard much from him. I know that there were some concerns with some of the parents as far as the masking and requesting mask exemptions. But as far as the candidacy, he's actually done a really good job at staying neutral. But outside of that, I haven't heard much, whether it's positive or negative from the superintendent. I've heard a lot of negative from the candidates, running who are just bashing each other. And
really?
Yeah. And for me personally, I just don't think that that's an advantageous way for us to improve the education system for the children. We focus on the kids. We make it better for the kids. We make sure our teachers feel heard. We make sure that our parents feel heard and that their choices are still options and that their voice means something. And that's kind of what I'm hearing across the board is everybody just wants to be heard.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked that question is when I had the previous superintendent and first time a year after he joined the organization. And when I asked him the question about charter schools and whether they had anything that they thought they could use or share methodology, he essentially said, I don't want to look at the charter schools. We run our school differently. And that was, that, and he never came back on my interview after that. But there is, they have to be open too.
You have to have a growth mindset
right.
when you're, and on my, I had met with Ed Lucius, and one of the questions he asked was the superintendent search. And do I think that past behaviors and things that have happened in the district would dissuade good candidates from coming? And I don't think so, because I think that the candidate that we want, first of all, they're out there somewhere. We just have to find them. And second of all, we want them to have a growth mindset, because part of being a superintendent is continuing to grow the academic successes of the district. And we can't do that with someone who just wants to stay where we're at. It just won't work that way. So, yeah, I think...
I hope you get elected because you're open and you're looking for ways of doing things better.
Well, I hope I get elected too.
No, one of my grandsons goes to St. Christopher's Academy.
Oh, that's a great school.
Yeah, and at 4 years old, what he's learning, I'm surprised.
I stopped being able to follow along with math at about second grade now. So, we have the three boys in our household, and the big boys are the ones. If the 12-year-old has questions about math, I'm like, look, I'm out. You have to go ask one of your brothers because I have no idea what you're doing or how the process, because everything looks different.
Well, they do it differently from when I went to school, too.
Well, we don't carry the one.
There's a lot of different things.
That Common Core.
I always wondered why. It didn't seem as effective for me anyway. But that's I
don't really know. I think it's the way that a kid's brain processes the way that a child's brain processes things. I think it might have something to do with that and breaking it down into smaller pieces so that kids can understand it a little bit better. But I know that I don't understand it. So when my kids did remote learning, we went right back real quick to carry the one because that's what Mama knew and that's what we were going with.
Okay, yeah.
And we got through it together.
Right. Well, we're running out of time. Is there anything else you want to say to our audience about why you want to be there and what you're going to do? So,
vote for Alicia Houston for Board of Education on the November 2nd election. Don't forget to vote. I'm asking for your vote because I want to be the voice for the people. I want to be the voice for you. I want to give you your choices back. I want to be an ear to listen. We spent a lot of time together collaboratively over the last 18 months crying. And I want to be the person that you feel comfortable sharing those vulnerabilities, and I'll share mine with you. I'm not perfect. I will never pretend to be, but I will be honest to a fault. And I will provide the utmost transparency, and I will hold myself accountable. And I hope that you will hold me accountable as well.
Well, thank you very well for saying all that. I'm going to vote for you.
Well, I hope other people do. Vote for me.
Okay. There
Awesome.
she is.
Thank you so much, Carl. I always love coming on.
Yeah, very good. And you'll have to come on after the election.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.